You're listening to Interactive Wrestling Radio, featuring the Interactive Interview, courtesy of WrestlingEpicenter.com.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. I'd like to welcome you to this week's Impact Wrestling Press Pass podcast. This is Ross Foreman, and still waiting for Josh. I'm not sure. I know he's on another call, just as he was last week, always on these important calls, and seems to text me the minute beforehand. So we'll be going without him. Just a reminder, this Friday we have, against all odds, we have the big in-ring debut for wrestling debut for Scarlett Bordeaux, taking on none other than Glenn Gilberti. We'll follow that up next Thursday, April 4th, Rahway Recreational Center, Rahway, New Jersey. United we stand, a night of truly dream matches. You got Sami Callihan, Jimmy Havoc. You got Rich Swann, Yamada for the X Division. You got a Ultimate X match, which Johnny Impact is now part of. Then, of course, you have Team Impact against Team Lucha Underground featuring Daga, Drago, Aerostar, Cuerno. So it's going to be a loaded night. And with that, I'm going to open up the phone line and welcome our guest for this week, who is involved in arguably one of the most highly anticipated matches on the United We Stand. It is the intergender match. Our guest today, Joey Ryan, one-on-one against Knockout Tessa Blanchard. Joey, how you doing today?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing very well. How are things going for you?
Things are well. I'm in Kansas City right now. I have a show tonight, so I'm enjoying some Midwest rainy weather, as it were. But yeah, other than that, things are good. My flight made it on time, so I'm ready to go, ready to rock and roll.
Well, that's most important. Let me ask you your thoughts heading into United We Stand, one-on-one with Tessa Blanchard.
I think it's an incredible opportunity for Tessa and I to really show what intergender wrestling can do and what it can be. She's obviously a well-versed wrestler in all styles and all opponents. I think one of the best going today. In any genre, any matchup. So it's kind of an honor for me too, because we've never had a singles match together. We've worked together in some tag matches, but we've never had a singles together. So I think this one is going to be really good. It's going to be really special.
Joey, talk to us about some of the times you've been in the ring with Tessa, what you remember, and talk to us about her as a competitor.
Well, so we teamed one time, and it was cool. It was in Florida. We did that, and that was the first time I had ever been in the ring with her. I mean, obviously I knew her previously, but the first time I've ever been in the ring with her, and she has a fire and intensity about her that I think you can tell just by watching her. Fans can see it, whether live or even on television. They can see how passionate she is and how she really carries that Blanchard tradition of wrestling in her blood, and it really, and it's really a sight to be seen, standing as close as you are when you're in a ring with her. The second time we wrestled against each other, it was me and Candice LeRae versus her and Colt Cabana, actually at the Cow Palace in San Francisco, which is a large venue, and it was cool because she doesn't, the Florida venue was a small high school gym kind of place, and this was a Cow Palace, and her intensity doesn't change. She's very much the same competitor, and the surroundings don't affect her, whether it's a huge audience or a more intimate crowd. She's a professional, and she's intense to be around. Let's put it that way. She's a little bit more intimidating, even I would say, in the ring than most are.
So your thoughts about a singles match with her? She certainly is a very competitive, very fiery, aggressive competitor. Your thoughts about the match April 3rd?
I don't know exactly what to expect, but I trust that her and I will put on at least a show that will give the audience something to talk about. I'm a little bit more character driven. I'm a little bit more, dare I say, cartoonish, and she's more serious and more, and more intense, to use, not to overkill that word, but so it's there's definitely a clash there, but I think that clash plays well in a situation like this where now the audience will I think there'll be a vibe when we're in the ring together that the audience will feel watching.
All righty. Well, we will open up for media questions momentarily, but I'll just follow up with that statement from you, Joey, and we'll just ask you. Let's talk about Joey Ryan in the ring these days. Certainly an international superstar, very entertaining, but very accomplished as well.
Yeah, I found something that works for me, and I ran with it, and I'm not afraid to go over the top. I'm not afraid to be a spectacle. I definitely want to be that. I want to earn that special attraction moniker that I get a lot when I wrestle. I've training with Samoa Joe, training with Brian Kendrick, training with Daniel Bryan. So I can be intense, and I know how to move in the ring, and I know how to get the job done bell to bell. But I also really enjoy the theatrical part of professional wrestling, which it seems to be, I guess, my strong suit, because it's what got me nationally and internationally known. So I'm not afraid to be a little outlandish. I do know what it takes to get the job done bell to bell, but I want the audience to go home remembering my persona.
All righty. Well, we will open up for media questions. Joey, I did get a message from our tech people. Sounds like we're a little scratchy. We're trying to work on this media. Joey, I don't know if you can perhaps drop away from the phone and speak up, and we should be good to go. I apologize to the media if that was a little scratchy, that first opening segment, but we will switch it now for media questions. If you have a question, please *6 to get in queue.
Q&A session has started. To ask your question, please press *6.
Oh, hello, Joey.
Hello.
My name is Stephanie from Theatre Magazine in UK, calling from France. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Fine. Intergender wrestling is heavily criticized and for many, many different reasons. Some are comparing it to domestic abuse and things like that. I'm going to say that. How do you see it? How do you... I don't have my words.
If you'd like to ask your request has been received.
How do you advocate of it? What would you say to defend this kind of wrestling, this kind of matches? Thank you.
Well, I think an important difference between domestic violence and professional wrestling is consent. The wrestlers have agreed to wrestle each other, and the wrestlers have, agreed to all that comes with professional wrestling, as opposed to domestic violence, which isn't consented. Also, again, as I mentioned earlier, I'm heavy on the theatrical side of pro wrestling, and there tends to be a split between the professional wrestling is a sport versus professional wrestling is theater, amongst the fans and even amongst some of the wrestlers themselves. I lean more towards the theatrical part, and in my experience, in my watching, I think movies and TV shows, they have strong female characters and who fight men all the time, and nobody really compares that to domestic violence. It's easy to say, like, superhero movies, those people have superpowers, but I've seen plenty of movies. Atomic Blonde comes to mind, where Charlize Theron is fighting men throughout the whole thing, and it's nobody ever stops to say, or Kill Bill even, with Uma Thurman, nobody stops to say, oh, this is going to trigger domestic violence or trigger some. So I see it more as theatrical. I see it more as a Broadway play than necessarily a sport. And then even inside some sports, you can have men and women competing against each other, or like figure skating. Sometimes those are an intergender act. So and that's treated as that's an Olympic sport, I believe. So so it does cross over a little bit in the sport, but yeah, I don't really see the trigger of it because it's consented and it's theater. To me, it's theater.
Yeah, but I'm pro. I appreciate this kind of match shows, mostly when they are like you do, doing with respect and everything is brightly made, like you do.
Yeah. No, I mean, I love it. I think it as a performer, it opens up new avenues for me to be creative. I can't think of an intergender match the same way I think into a match where I'm wrestling another man, because an important factor in making professional wrestling, getting people to suspend their disbelief, so to speak, is to make it believable or as believable as possible. So you can't do the same things with a man that you can with a woman, but you can still make those actions believable in your storytelling. And I, as a storyteller in professional wrestling, that really motivates me to come up with ways to not insult the audience's intelligence.
Yeah. But are you back with Impact Wrestling, or is it a one-shot match?
Well, so far it's just this one, but if I can score a win over a top knockout like Tessa, maybe they'll have to consider it.
I can continue, Ross, or Ross?
Yeah,
Go ahead. What was your question?
Oh, and I'm alone. I felt like I'm alone tonight, so.
I wanted to give you your space, Stephanie. If you're good, we're going to move on to the next caller.
Yeah, of course, Ross. And thank you, Joey. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hey, Joey. This is Riju from Sportskeeda in India. How are you doing today?
I'm doing all right. How are you?
I'm doing great, man. So my first question is, how did you come up with your gimmick, and what was the initial reaction of the people to some of your gimmick overall?
Well, the idea was, and I've been doing this gimmick for quite a while now. When you first start wrestling, you kind of feel like you have to mimic what's popular, what's currently popular, in order to get popular yourself. But once I realized that wrestling's kind of a blank canvas and you can kind of paint any picture you want, I decided to be a wrestler like the wrestling I grew up watching. And I have 3 older brothers, so I got into watching wrestling very young and in the 80s, so I wanted to be an 80s wrestler. So, I grew out the chest hair, I grew out the mustache, and I wanted to present myself with that look, which made wrestling a whole lot more fun for me. Is I became kind of an 80s looking, almost a parody of 80s looking wrestling, which was fun. And the reaction was because I picked an 80s icon like Magnum PI to like kind of mimic with the Hawaiian print, the floral patterns, and as cool as Magnum PI was in the 80s, he's if somebody was walking down the street nowadays looking like that, you'd think he was kind of creepy or kind of sleazy. So the idea was to look like a top 80s babyface, but the reaction of today's fans to that look is more of a heelish reaction. So that's where the sleaze kind of came involved, and I kind of played that up because that's what the audience, that's how the audience was responding anyway. So I just went with it. So yeah, I just wanted to be like an 80s wrestler that I grew up, like, the style of wrestling I watched growing up. I even changed the way, I threw punches to be more 80s, and the way I moved in the ring to be more 80s. And it just made it more fun for me to rather than try to like mimic a style or a look that I wasn't really, not really a fan of, but just I wasn't really as into as I was when I was a kid growing up. So I just was like, I'm just gonna roll this out and see how it works, and it worked well for me.
Great. I have a quick follow-up. You have obviously worked with a lot of the roster while in Lucha Underground, but who are some of the other talents in Impact Wrestling that you look forward to working with?
I've been wrestling for 19 years now, so a lot of the guys in Impact Wrestling I've faced at one point or another in my career. That's when you get to a certain point of your career. You've seen a lot of the same faces. Time and time again. Obviously in Impact, the stakes are a little bit different, so it might be more I guess of a challenge now to face them, like in an Impact setting. So. I always like working, with Brian Cage. Obviously I did with him in Lucha Underground a bit. Eli Drake is another one of my favorites, a longtime friend of mine. I actually got to wrestle him last year on an Impact Twitch stream. Maybe it was earlier this year even. No, it was last year on an Impact Twitch stream, which was really fun out in Tennessee. So there's a lot of people on the roster that I really enjoy being around and have enjoyed wrestling in the past. But I think in an Impact setting would be different.
Great. And I have one last final question. A lot of our readers wanted to know what it was like working with Mia Khalifa, the adult film actress.
She's really nice. She's really sweet. She really wanted to, she made those comments about professional wrestling, and I think she didn't expect the backlash she got, because I think a lot of people don't realize how wide the professional wrestling fan base is, and how it's not really just an underground thing. That it's pretty mainstream. So I think once she saw the reaction to it, she took responsibility of her own comment and actually went to a wrestling school and learned a little bit of wrestling. With Thunder Rosa, who was Cobra Moon and on Lucha Underground. She got in the ring a little bit, and then Sabotage Wrestling was in contact with her, and they wanted to do a bit with her interfering or interrupting me in the ring, and it was really fun. She's a sweetheart, and she owned up to her comments about professional wrestling and really kind of learned, which is learned about it herself, which is great, because some people just kind of get stubborn with their ideas, but she was open to learning about it once she saw the backlash she got for making those comments.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Riju, you asked 3 questions. You didn't even ask the most important question for Josh and myself. So we're just going to move along. You're not going to get your answer this week. But, Joey, we're going to go to a question, kind of follow up on something you were just talking. You had a question via Facebook coming to you from Craig Darlington. He would like to know, would you ever shave your chest hair?
I used to shave it all the time, when I first started wrestling. And since I decided to adopt this 80s character, I think I've only shaved it maybe one time, and that was in an angle where I wrestled Chris Sabin, and after the match he pulled out a razor and shaved a little bit of it, just to kind of extend our angle we were doing. It was at Pro Wrestling Gorilla, and then so I shaved it also so it could grow back, equally. But yeah, I don't, it's not something I thought about since I adopted this character. It kind of fits the look. So, I mean, never say never, but as of right now, I'm kind of settled in with it.
Joey, would that ever be like if you ever went down to back down to Mexico, a lucha libre match? You put put his mask on the line, and you'll put your chest hair on the line. Have you done that?
I have not done that, but that's not a bad idea.
They usually make a few bucks on that. Maybe we can talk about that offline later. I got one more question for you directly from Facebook from Alfonso, and I apologize, Alfonso. I'm not going to pronounce your last name because I'm going to butcher it. But Alfonso would like to know, Joey, do you have a name for your junk?
Do I have a what?
Do you have a name for your junk?
I don't, which is surprising because it is such a featured part of my act. But no, there's no nicknames, there's no special names or anything. It's just me. But maybe it's something I'll consider. Maybe something I can market, something I can brand even. Release merchandise of. A little side income. But we'll see. As of now, no though.
Hi, Joey. It's Nick Hausman from Wrestling Inc. Thanks so much for taking the time today.
Thank you.
I'll start off by asking you, how are you feeling right now that you are finally free of your Lucha Underground contract, and does this make Impact more appealing to you now that you are a completely free agent?
Well, it's a weird situation because, Lucha Underground was open to, obviously there's guys that are still under Lucha Underground contract that are working with Impact Wrestling. So it wasn't necessarily a roadblock before, but I just felt like and this is the more the business side of things, and even a little bit political, but I just feel like for me to be completely free of any contracts opens me up to negotiate with anybody.
If you'd like to remove yourself from the queue, please press 1. Otherwise, you've been removed from the queue.
That people have to take to get me. They can come directly to me, and I can negotiate, and there's no restrictions, too. I can negotiate with anybody. I know Lucha Underground has, restrictions for some places that they don't want you to work, rivals to AAA or, rivals to them, Lucha Underground specifically. But so now I can negotiate with anybody, and I can talk to anybody, and then, and not only that, but not only does it open up more options for me to go to, but the places I do want to go to now maybe have to, dig a little bit deeper into the pocketbook because they know that, that I could literally show up anywhere at any time. So that was it. It was just more peace of mind than anything else. The fact that there's no Lucha Underground step for people to take to get a hold of me.
Yeah, awesome. And I'll follow up by asking you, you just a little while ago said you've been wrestling for 19 years, and you look not like somebody who has been wrestling for 19 years. You've really been able to make a career of this. I would just like to know the advice that you give young talent right now that is looking to kind of take a similar path that you have.
Well, there's two steps. One, if you're first starting out, I always recommend finding a trainer who's been the places you want to go. And it's not necessarily it's not necessarily going to determine you getting to those places because a lot of that's your own work and your own branding. But it definitely it's like a cheat code in a video game. You kind of have someone that can guide you to those places. Other than that, don't if you've become a professional wrestler, you're probably a pretty big fan of it. At least in this day and age, I think there's more wrestling fans getting into wrestling than like ex-football players, so to speak. So you're probably a lifelong fan of it. So you have good instincts for professional wrestling. But a lot of times we have ideas and as wrestlers, and we think, oh, this will never work, or I don't know how to execute this, and you shut down your own ideas even though they're good. Maybe they just need to work on, like I said, on the execution of it, or to iron out some of the odd ends of it. But there's nothing wrong. Professional wrestling is a place where you can keep on reinventing yourself. So there's nothing wrong with going and trying something, and if it doesn't work, changing it up, or even just keeping the parts that did work and altering the parts that didn't work. Because usually the genesis of an idea, especially if you're a lifelong fan, is a pretty good idea because you understand wrestling from years of watching it. So usually the ideas are pretty good. It's usually the execution that takes work. So I just tell people not to shut down their own ideas just because they think they might be too far out of the box.
Cool. My board. Cool. Thank you very much, Joey. And, I look forward to seeing you at United We Stand.
Oh, thanks.
Hey, Joey. This is Brandy with the Pro Wrestling Post. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Doing good. I kind of live in the wrestler life myself. I'm traveling to go to the Wrestle Summit. So if you hear anything in the background, I'm sorry.
That's all right. That's all right. I'm sitting on a porch in Kansas City with rain in the background and cars driving in the background. So
you said on Twitter that you wanted your character to have an oral fixation, and not everyone allows smoking in the building. So what made you decide on lollipop?
Well, so before the lollipop, I was doing, and I think I mentioned it in the tweet that you're talking about. I would smoke a cigarette to the ring on a lot of independent shows. It just helped the sleazy look. And I think I gave Impact the credit for telling me, or like told them when I was in Impact, they told me. But I think the first people, Wrestling Society X, the MTV show I was on, I think they mentioned it too about not having the lit cigarette near the pyro because I might accidentally set it off. But I think when I brought it back up to Impact, they were like, yeah, they kind of sat down and explained to me that if you accidentally set the pyro off, it could mortally wound you. So I was like, all right, understood. I won't have the lit cigarette. I guess excuse me. I guess some wrestlers, I think even Impact had Jeff Hardy smoke a cigarette, and Big Show used to do it in WCW. So I think if they specially gear it towards, if they turn off all the pyro, but I don't think at least in my juncture at Impact, they were willing to make special arrangements for me. But anyways, I like the idea of my character kind of wanting, having like an oral fixation, because I think it just helped the sleazy look. So I switched to the lollipops because obviously they're not going to start a fire and they're not going to set pyro off. And then through that, just became different ways to play with it and use it, and then actually became part of my finishing move now. So it's just kind of fun to see it evolve. And again, it was an idea that was on the surface just an idea, and then through time, it evolved into something different.
That's awesome. Who's in the Knockouts roster would you like to have an intergender match with in the future?
I just had one with Jordan Grace in Australia, which was really fun. And I got this one with Tessa coming up. I've wrestled Taya a few times. Trying to think of any first-time matches that I wouldn't mind having. I've teamed with Kiera Hogan a couple times before. I've never wrestled her. And the Knockouts roster is pretty deep. So I've wrestled Rosemary one time. So yeah, I think again through the years I've had at least a match, whether it's teaming or against, with most of the Knockouts. Madison Rain just came back. I don't think I've ever done anything with her. So yeah, I mean maybe that one if I'm going for a first time match. But yeah, I've had the pleasure in my many years of professional wrestling, not to make myself sound old, but I've had the pleasure of working with a lot of the current Knockouts.
That's awesome. So what is different about Impact Wrestling, the company, compared to when you were there the first time?
From what I understand, it's a completely different office, a completely different helm at the ship, so to speak. I enjoyed my time in Impact. Everyone, because of the way I was cut, everyone thinks I must have, or the way my character was brought in, people think I must be at odds and ends with the office. But when I was there, Eric Bischoff and Hulk Hogan were there in the office, and obviously Bruce Pritchard, and I got along with everyone. Dixie Carter, I got along with her great. It was, obviously what they had in mind then didn't really work for the company long term. And none of those, I don't think any of those people are, well, I know that none of them are with the company currently. And so, from what I understand talking to friends, it's a completely different environment there. So that's a little bit exciting too. I did the one Impact Twitch show last year that I spoke of earlier, and I got to see a little bit of that office at work. But I'm kind of excited here to do this United We Stand show, just to kind of see how it's run, see how different it's run from the Impact I remember.
That's awesome. I'm glad to hear that. One last question. I know you're an Angels fan and you're a fan of Disneyland. Do you have any other hobbies outside of wrestling?
Well, I watch baseball a lot. Angels are my team, but I'll watch any baseball. I even was trying to get to go. It's raining now, so I don't know if that's going to affect the game. But even before the show tonight in Kansas City, I was trying to get the guy to take me to the Royals home. It's today's opening day, so I'll watch any baseball. Really, there's quite a lot of it. Most people noted each team plays 162 games a year, so there's a lot to follow if you're following it. It keeps you pretty occupied. But when I'm not doing that, pretty casual. I mean, I do like to go to theme parks. I'm a theme park guy. Disney is number one for me, but Universal is good, or Six Flags. I like too. Or just going to see concerts where bands I like play. I do that a lot. Watch a lot of movies. I'm into theater and TV and stuff. So yeah, I keep it pretty casual. Nothing too. I'm not some crazy extreme skydiver or anything. I don't have anything too crazy. No, I don't parkour or anything like that. So I'm just pretty casual.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Joey. I'll see you sometime down the road.
Thank you.
So we're going to follow that up with kind of a follow-up to one of her comments. But this comes a YouTube question from George Comport, who would like to know, what is your favorite flavor of lollipop?
Ooh, my favorite flavor. It it changes often, but I think because I use the Blow Pops brand when I wrestle, and the one that's consistently like the one that I'm never tired of, I guess, would be the blue raspberry flavor, which is a little bit rare. It's not one of the ones that comes in the combo pack. You have to kind of search those out. So whenever I get the chance to get blue raspberry, I'm always a little extra excited.
I just thought about, Joey, maybe you have the answer that everybody's been looking for years and decades. How many licks does it take to get Trento?
Well, I never actually get to that part because I always end up giving it to someone in the audience on my entrance, or feeding it to my opponent for my finishing move. So I never actually finish them. I never get to the gum of the blow pop, but I always end my blow pop adventures prematurely.
All right. Well, guess we'll still wait to find out how many licks it takes.
Yeah.
Hi, this is Bill Pritchard from WrestleZone. How are you, Joey?
Doing well. How are you?
I'm good. So I know you just got out of this contract with Lucha Underground, but would there be a big benefit to you signing another exclusive deal just so you would maybe keep yourself on a national level again?
Well, I mean, there's that. I mean, obviously, you have to weigh the pros and cons and then the benefit versus, versus weighing the benefits. But, I'm not in a rush to necessarily, because I think, with social media and, this independent wrestling boom, I think there's a lot of national notoriety coming just from doing the independent wrestling. Twitter's big, Instagram's big. Everybody sees everything now. When I first started wrestling, if I wanted to watch a show that was happening in New York, I'm from Los Angeles, I'd have to wait, 3 months for it to get released on VHS. Then I'd have to go find a tape trader that would sell it or trade it. It would be but now everything is, there's GIFs or GIFs, if you prefer, of every show almost immediately, or video clips from fans in the audience. So I think, you can get national notoriety from being independent right now currently. A contract is nice because it's kind of safe. You have a job, you have income, even maybe when you're not hustling your own bookings independently. That's one of the definite benefits. But the way I look at it right now is I'm not in a huge rush, because it's like when you're in a long-term relationship and you break up, it's not healthy just to jump right into a new relationship. Kind of be single for a little while and feel it out and wait till the wounds heal, and then you'll have a clear picture of where you want to go and who you want to be. So right now, I think I'm just going to stay independent for a little while and then figure out what's the best move for me.
Okay. And then as a follow-up, you mentioned earlier you're okay with, presenting yourself as a spectacle, but is there an instance where you ever turned down an idea for one reason or another, whether it was like you thought it was too unsafe or, went against your like personal beliefs or something like that?
I mean, there's always, the safe thing is kind of like, obviously I won't do anything that's super dangerous. I've never done deathmatch stuff before, and that's just personal preference. But, having the shtick that I do, I always want to make sure that my opponents can do what they do, because they're willing to play along with what I've got. And it's a little bit silly sometimes. So if they're willing to do it, they, to help me get my stuff over, I want to be willing and open to get their stuff over. So I rarely turn down ideas for spots or moves that would help my opponent, get to where they want to be. As far as ideas go, sometimes, it's never like a huge part of a match. Like for instance, the one that comes to the top of my head is like I recently turned down a kiss spot with another man, and it's not because I didn't want to kiss, because I've kissed plenty of men in wrestling matches in my life, but I felt like it was forced. I felt like it was the way that was presented to me was like, hey, let's show everybody how progressive we are by kissing in this match, and I didn't think it needed it. So I thought that maybe like it was more like it didn't play well with what we had, and I thought it was more like eye rolling than anything, because like I don't want to do a spot just to show that we're progressive, so to speak. So that comes to mind. But never, I can't think of anything an instant where I turned down like a major part of a match.
All right. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Hey, this is Riju from Sportskeeda again. I had one follow-up question. Because of your outrageous style, you have some critics, especially Jim Cornette. What do you think of him picking on you so many times? Thank you.
Well, I mean, he won. There's quite a few traditionalists that don't really care for what I do. But you know what? I've noticed that, the negative is always more vocal. You know, if you like something, you're less likely to talk about it than if you hate something, if you want to get your outrage out. So I just did a show with Hacksaw Jim Duggan, and he saw my stuff for the first time. And when I came back to the locker room, he's like, man, I loved it. He's like, I know what it's like. And he held up his 2x4. He's like, I needed something stupid to get me over too. And that was the biggest compliment, one of the biggest compliments. So like, there are traditionalists who understand that, you know, getting something over is difficult, and keeping it over is even more difficult. So they get where I'm coming from. As far as I was a fan of Cornette growing up. You know, we just don't see eye to eye in wrestling, and that's fine. Wrestling is subjective. You don't have to have the same opinion. I don't need everyone to be my fan. That's not what I'm after. But yeah, I mean, it's going to happen no matter what. You know, I can name 100 wrestlers right now that get buried by other wrestlers or other personalities from the past, and Young Bucks and Kenny Omega get it, and Sami Callihan gets it, and they all get the same kind of heat that I get. But to each their own. I guess that's cliche to say, but I mean, there's wrestling for everybody out there, and I found a fan base that supports what I do, and I'd rather focus on the positive than the negative.
All right, Joey, we're going to go to a YouTube question that came in Russian, and Google translated from Gaius Augustus. And I'm not even sure if this is a question for you or actually for me. He would like to know if your junk would be a guest on a future episode of Press Pass Podcast. So I'll let you answer that first.
Just the junk, huh?
Just the junk, yeah.
Just the junk. It's a little, you might need a translator. I don't know how well it speaks the language, but I guess I would leave it up to my junk.
All right. Well, we don't want to speak for the junk, so we'll just move along. I'm sure that would be a yes on my end, and perhaps a yes from the junk.
It's more of a visual thing than an audio thing, I think.
Perhaps.
Hey, Joey and Ross. It's Mike Johnson from PW Insider. How are you?
Doing well. How are you?
Good. So you had a pectoral issue last year. You had torn your pec. I was wondering how it's doing. At one point you had talked about surgery, but that obviously hasn't happened. So where are we? Because obviously you're going to be wrestling Tessa that weekend. You're going to have other matches coming up. You're wrestling this weekend. Where are we in terms of the injury? Are you just working around it, or have you rehabbed it? Where do you stand on that?
So yeah, in early November last year, I tore something in my chest, and then I went to the doctor, and the doctor, looked at it and looked at the bruising and the swelling and said it didn't look good, and that she recommended me to have surgery. So I met with the surgeon. So I got an MRI. Sorry, I should rewind. The doctor sent me to get an MRI. When she got the results, she said, "Yeah, it looks like you're going to need surgery." So I took the MRI results to the surgeon, and the surgeon looked at it, and he kind of gave me a couple tests of his own, and he said that it looked like there's still enough muscle attached. There wasn't a major tear; it was like several micro tears, is what he called it. But he said there was still enough muscle attached because where my chest and my shoulder connect, that we could rebuild that muscle and we could possibly avoid surgery. So he recommended So the surgeon recommended physical therapy instead of surgery. So I went to the physical therapist, and I started the physical therapy sessions and started rebuilding the muscle, and he saw no complications, so he okayed me to go back to work. So I eased myself back into matches in February, so like maybe 3 months after the tears. I eased myself back into doing matches, tag matches or, over-the-top comedy stuff, just to kind of play it safe for a little while. And I had no issues, no problems, and the more I did physical therapy, the stronger it got. So then I started taking more, singles matches or more, serious matches. And I've had no issues so far. Wrestling, I mean, it feels normal when I wrestle. You can see a little bit of the tears in there, like it looks a little bit different on my left pec than my right pec. But other than that, I haven't really felt any changes really. I'm still being very protective of it. I'm not lifting weights like I was before. I'm keeping light weights, high reps more. Now, changing my workouts, doing a little bit more high impact training, a little bit more cardio, just to kind of keep myself in conditioning because I can't lift like I once did. And the physical therapist, I saw sessions. He said, you got to be consistent, and it's a slow process. But he says, another year or so, I could probably be up to 90% of what it was, which is kind of the best. He said even if you get surgery, you're never going to be 100% again. So he said that the physical therapy is going well, and I could probably get it to be about 90% of where it was if I keep consistent. So that's where I'm at. And like I said, it hasn't bugged me one time wrestling, and it hasn't prevented me from doing anything wrestling. So I'm just, like I said, slowly building the strength back up in it.
Okay. You talked a little bit about the Lucha Underground situation earlier on. Now that you're out of there and you're through that tunnel and you can look back, do you regret signing the contract when you did? And do you wish maybe they had just been a little bit more lenient? And had they been lenient, would you have been okay with staying with them?
Well, so, I when I signed the contract, I mean, it was fine when I signed the contract, but, and I was happy to, and I loved the product, and I loved the crew. I loved the producers and the writers and the other wrestlers. If I would work there forever if there was work. The problem is that there's not work. So, when I signed, I signed between season 1 and season 2, and, there was maybe like a 3-month break between season 1 and season 2, and then when we filmed season 3 almost right after that, so it looked like, they were going to film like at least 2 seasons a year, and then after season 2, or after season 3, there was like a year before season 4, and then it's been over a year since season 4, and that was the thing, is there's just no work. We're like locked into these contracts where there's no work to be done, so it's just kind of, there's really no point to it, to being locked in, because it doesn't even look like anyone's even working on season 5, and I don't know if season 5 is actually going to happen. So that was it. I mean, I wasn't misled. They didn't tell me they didn't say, hey, if you sign this, we're going to film 2 seasons a year. That was the impression I got just from being around that situation, and so I don't regret it necessarily, and it gave me some fun segments. I got to do the undercover police thing, police officer thing, which was very fun. It was different, got a different kind of creative juices flowing for me. So I got a lot out of it, and like I said, if I loved the product and the crew and the cast, and if there was work, I would stay there forever, but there's just not work. And I needed to be free, again, like I mentioned earlier, I needed to be free to really to not have, I didn't want people to have to take that step. Well, if we want French and Joey, we have to talk to Lucha Underground because he's contractually obligated. I just wanted to be free from that so I could negotiate my best rates and my best deals with whoever I decided to negotiate with.
So one last question. At United We Stand, you're going to be wrestling Tessa. Great wrestler. You guys are familiar with each other. The intergender wrestling aspect of pro wrestling has become more and more integrated in wrestling in general. We've seen WWE do the Mixed Match Challenge. It's on just about every major independent show you can think of now. The first time the idea was pitched to you, did you ever think it would become as commonplace and as much of a cornerstone of wrestling on the independent scene as it's become? Because, wrestling is whatever people are willing to pay for and whatever the product is that they want to pay for. But the one thing that's interesting to me is how commonplace the intergender stuff has become. As someone who's made a lot of money doing it and is going to make money doing it, United We Stand, are you surprised at how prevalent it's become?
Well, I guess so. I never really thought about it as being something like, because again, I always think of wrestling as theater, so I never really thought of it as a thing that was different or unique. Because, and again, I grew up watching WWE, and obviously I was teenager during the Attitude Era, so and they had a lot of intergender stuff going on there. So it was just wrestling to me. And when I first started wrestling, so I wrestled a few women, against a few women. And I never really thought about it as something, and it's when I started teaming with Candice and we became a regular tag team that that it became something different, that people looked at it differently, and people started associating us with being different. And because to me, I thought it was like a cool idea, but like there were some people, especially like after we had our guerrilla warfare match with the Young Bucks and Candice Bled, that there was a little bit of backlash there. But it was mostly positive, so we kept rolling with it. But yeah, it was really only when I started teaming with Candice that I really saw that people thought of it as something different or unique. But yeah, I mean, I think it's a natural progression, especially in the way the world is today, is that, we're working on, as a society, even working on more, trying to be more equal, I think, in a progressive society. And, there's like a lot of strong female characters in movies and comic books and TV, and, and wrestling is, I think it's a natural progression for wrestling to not, because obviously, back in, like, if you watch Attitude Era, some of that intergender stuff they did, other than China was, I mean, you can mock them doing like the housewarming match or house clean, whatever, because obviously because China's a woman, they did the stuff with Jared about cleaning, but that was part of the angle they were doing. So I think other than China, a lot of the intergender stuff they did was kind of more like cringy, I think, but now it's taken a little bit more serious, where the women are treated as serious competitors that can go toe to toe with men, or they can beat men. So I think that's the natural progression, is to build strong female characters to go with, to compete in the ring.
All right, sir. I appreciate the time, and stay healthy, and best of luck to you going forward.
Thank you.
Stephanie for Steel Chair Magazine again. I wanted to know who are the wrestlers that influenced you to build that character, this really macho man. Who are the wrestlers that influenced you? And if not, maybe not wrestlers.
Right. Like I said, when I adopted the look, I looked for like cool 80s, so I looked at Magnum PI, and obviously, Magnum TA also, was an extension of the Magnum PI coolness of the 80s. So I wasn't the first wrestler to take that look, but like I said, it was kind of weird because growing up, having three older brothers in wrestling, my older brothers always liked the bad guys, like the Jake Roberts, the Rick Rudes, and I was always like Hulk Hogan or Rick Steamboat, British Bulldogs. But I can't really say that those guys influenced the way it was. It was more like I said, the heels of the genre that influenced the look. As far as, I think I'm just heavily for style-wise, I think I'm just heavily influenced by the Attitude Era itself, because that was during my formative years, and that was when wrestling was most exciting to me. So I try to do that, I guess, a little bit of controversy, a little bit of flash, a little bit of, character, a little bit over the top. Just I try to present myself as that, because that's the wrestling that if I fell in love with wrestling in the 80s, the Attitude Era is when I really bonded with it. I really became emotionally invested in it, and I guess I just try to present a little bit of that, as to where a lot of wrestling's trying to tail away from that. So I don't know if it was necessarily, like I said, the look is based on the 80s wrestlers I saw when I was growing up, but the style is more of like a 90s style, late 90s style of WWE.
Yeah, Magnum PI, but without the car, without the red car.
yeah, Ferrari, the Ferrari. Yeah.
The Italian red car. And do you feel like when you were on national television, as opposite to the way you are when you were wrestling, I would not say, for indie promotions or things like that, the character is different. The fact you can't do this.
Right.
The penis lock and the blue.
I feel
making
like
a difference.
I feel like the character is the same. The moves are different. It's the same Sleazy character. I just, I just don't do the stuff that might be, too controversial for television. At least in this modern professional wrestling. So I, since the penis stuff since I've adopted that into my style, I've been on, I think, 3 television shows: Lucha Underground, MLW, and Championship Wrestling from Hollywood. And I don't do the penis stuff on those television shows. Sometimes, because the crowd still wants it, sometimes we'll do it dark, like when a match finishes, we'll do it like after the match so they can edit it off the television just so that the live audience has that payoff. But yeah, I mean, it's not like the character still plays well just being a sleazy guy, or like in Lucha Underground when I was the undercover police officer. So the character still plays even without the penis stuff, but I guess the penis stuff has become my worm or my stink face. Like a lot of the audience feels ripped off if they don't get to see it live. So we still kind of incorporated it, on the shows, but like dark, not films for television. But yeah, I mean, like I said, I think the character still lends itself well to television, just being so over the top and so like such a persona.
All righty, Joey. Well, I appreciate your time very much. We're coming up on an hour here, so I'm going to wrap it up with that question. We'll give you the floor for a final thought as we head into United We Stand next Thursday, Rahway, New Jersey.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. I know Tessa wants, has been an advocate of intergender wrestling, and obviously I have throughout my career too. And I think we're really going to turn some heads here. I think the people that are open. So some people don't like to open up to new ideas. They're pretty closed-minded or stubborn in their ways. But I think the people that maybe are on the fence about intergender wrestling, or at least open to the idea of it, we're going to turn some heads here. Next Thursday.
All righty, Joey. Again, I appreciate it very much. And just a quick note for the media, all the media who is coming to United We Stand, please, if you have not already, please reach out to me. Let me know. You will be there. We will have media interview availability, 9:30 to 10:30 at the arena. So I want to make sure everybody's taken care of. That'll wrap up for this week. And Joey, again, thank you very much. We'll see you a week from today in Rahway, New Jersey.
Thanks for having me.
Perfect. Thank you for calling.
Unmuted. Q&A session is over.